morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining IIoT World today. I assume that by now everyone is familiar with the webinar tool. If you have any questions for us, please use the Q&A and not the chat. You're welcome to chat as well if you'd like to tell us where you're located. But just make sure you use the Q&A, otherwise we're not going to see it because there'll be too much activity. To briefly introduce myself, I'm Jane Arnold. I've spent over 30 years in manufacturing and technology, and I'm really happy to lead this engaging discussion because IIoT is the wave of the future. And when you look at wanting to stay competitive in the manufacturing industry, the early adopters of industrial IoT have a competitive advantage. And now with rapid commoditization of technology, anyone who wants to connect machines and devices can do so in an affordable and secure way. And to stay resilient in the unpredictable economic environment, manufacturers need to rethink their approach and IIoT requires more from technology, including flexibility, scalability, and resiliency. Our panelists today, I'm excited to introduce them, are industry experts that are focused on this topic, and they want to share their insights with you, and I think you'll enjoy the discussion. So I would like for each panelist to introduce themselves. So we'll start from left to right on my screen, so it won't make what's not left to right to you. But Rowie, let's start with you first.
Hi, thank you, Jane, and hello, everyone. My name is Roy. I'm based out of London today. And my background is mainly as an entrepreneur. In the last 5 years, I was a co-founder, CTO and CEO of AI company. Before that, I did a PhD in computer vision. So in the last 10 years or so, I'm dealing with AI and mainly computer vision. In the last 6 months, I'm the head of AI and head of EMEA at Tulip Interfaces, based out of Boston. To those of you not familiar with Tulip, I hope there aren't many, but Tulip is a no-code platform helping operational team to connect, to build solutions and digitalize everything they're doing in the frontline operation. That's me, and looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you, Rowie. John?
Yes, hi everybody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, sorry I arrived very late, had some issues joining, but hi everybody, my name is John Conway. I'm the president of universalautomation.org, which is essentially an organization to drive better connectivity and integration of automation systems with the rest of the enterprise, and particularly IIoT systems. Back to you, Jane.
Pranitha?
Hi everybody. It is a real pleasure to be here as a speaker, and especially Jane Arnold, who's 30 years of experience in manufacturing and technology. It's an honor. So my background is electrical engineering, and as I graduated, I had a passion to work in semiconductors, and since the graduation to now, even though I say Microsoft, I'm working towards my semiconductor industry. I started off as process engineer. I even ended up running manual tools, 2 automated tools in the fab floor. And that has given me a vast knowledge of how connected these foundries need to be. And fortunately, I also got an opportunity to work in the 4 major fabs in the US, that is IBM, Micron, Global Foundries, and Intel. So being in this factory space, I've grown from process all the way to program product and to digital transformation. I think this is where I made the switch to Microsoft, and right now I'm working with Azure solutions for the semiconductor ecosystem to digitally transform the factories to factories of future. That's my background.
Thank you. Mohammed?
Thank you, Jane. I'm very glad to participate in today webinar. And personally, I have been working at Sweden Electric for 40 years, and I'm work at the Industry 4.0 initiatives in the implementation of in the industrial sector in specific. And I'm very interested to speak today about the connectivity and the legacy systems in the industrial sectors and the challenges that we had inside those implementations. My background is in mechatronics engineering, and I'm very interested to study the innovation when it comes to the industry perspective. And I'm doing the master degree in the design thinking and the transformation in Politecnico in Italy. Thank you.
Thank you. And Prasad.
Hey, thank you, Jane, and hello everyone. I'm Prasad Pai. I'm the Senior Director for Product Management at GE Digital. I look after the automation solutions for GE Digital. Been in the, I would say, industrial software space now 30 years, and it's been a fascinating journey just watching the industry go from one phase of technology adoption to the other to where we are today, and it's really been exciting. And with each phase, you kind of see the rate of adoption increasing as the technology becomes easier. It becomes more user friendly. It becomes more, I would say, more outcome focused as the industry tries to adopt and change itself and morph into what they can to be more efficient and more effective. So it's been fascinating, and thank you for having me on the panel today. I'm sure it will be an exciting discussion.
So, well, thank you, everyone. And I agree, this is definitely going to be an exciting discussion. So please, as a reminder, put your questions in the Q&A tool, and we will do our best to include them within our discussion or leave them for the end, depending on what makes sense. And then if we've missed answering your question, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. So I will start with my questions, and we have some prepared ahead of time. So as I mentioned, I spent most of my career focused on Industry 3.0, and over the past 2 years, I've visited a variety of factories. The first thing I noticed was the disparaging systems and lack of connectivity. Mohammed, you mentioned connectivity to legacy systems just now. Can you elaborate on that topic and tell us how IIoT is improving operational effectiveness?
Yeah, well, yeah. Thank you, Jane. Yes, transforming to the legacy systems is a very crucial factor when it comes to the improving of operational effectiveness. And actually, it's one of the biggest opportunities offered by IIoT, the ability to modernize the legacy systems. You know, that lack of connectivity makes it challenging to implement organization-wide monitoring and control. However, new solutions, which known as integration platforms, allow manufacturers to retrofit older machines with sensors, presenting a very cost-effective way to optimize existing assets. And those platforms function almost like an adapter for old machinery, collecting data from wire-based industrial protocol like Profibus, for example, and transferring it to Ethernet and connect it to the internal network. And in that very easy way, you can collect real-time data from almost a very old and obsolete controllers like LG, like Mitsubishi and P&R. And I think this is one of the very important benefit, significant benefit from the IIoT.
So thank you. And feel free, anyone, to jump in on the topic. But we'll continue on. It all is contiguous. So John, you have an interesting background working in automation for Schneider Electric. Are today's industrial automation systems helping or hindering with the realization of industrial IoT's promise? As Mohammed was mentioning about the legacy systems, how do you see that fit with the control systems that are there today?
Yeah, so just to be clear, when we talk about industrial automation, we're talking about PLCs, DCS systems, depending on which industry you're in. And if you think about a PLC or DCS system, they're connected with I/O, discrete and analog I/O, to a machine, to a process. So it's really the first point in time where a piece of equipment becomes digital. Okay, so really they should be at the center of this whole IoT discussion. But they're not, and the issue is that they're more of a problem than a help when it comes to IoT, because getting the data is not so easy, although that's getting better with initiatives like OPC UA. But more importantly, if I want to then close the loop, take some a result of some analytics and actually take a control action, adjust the set point, stop a machine, speed something up. That's very difficult, okay? And why is that very difficult? It's because the control systems, they're proprietary, in the IT world, we have Linux, we have Android. I can write software for these operating systems, and I can use that software on different platforms. In the automation world, a simple example, if I take a machine with a Siemens controller, I want to create a digital twin by connecting it to a Dassault system, simulation tool. I can do that. I write the software and do it. Then the next machine shows up and it's got a Rockwell controller or an Allen Buddy controller, and I've got to rewrite the software. Okay, and this is very painful and not cost effective. So we need the equivalent of Linux and Android in the automation world, and this is what universal automation is about. It's about a technology based on an IC standard and a community of users and vendors using a runtime execution engine, sharing this runtime execution engine, and further developing the execution engine. Okay, and in this way, with a universal automation, we'll be able to essentially create software components to link automation systems to other IT systems. And this is a much more cost-effective way to do that, independently of the automation system itself. Huh?
I agree. Back in the day, a long time ago, we used to use our data historian as a way to write back. So we would read it all from all over the plants, and then we would aggregate it. And then if we needed to write something back, we use that data historian just because of what you mentioned right there. And that was a challenge, making sure we did it in a secure way and that we didn't disrupt the operations. So Prasad, you're working in this space with GE Digital. What are some easy ways an organization can implement these new IIoT technologies and methods?
Great question, Jane. And I think I'll kind of I'll lean towards what you just said about data historians, right? I think the easiest way for organizations right now to start down the IIoT journey is look at their data management philosophy. What is, what do they have enough data that is coming in? Do they, or if they feel they have enough data, then what can they do with their data? And I think what I've seen with customers who have first analyzed how much data they have and what data they need, and then lay out saying, okay, based on what we have, these are the 5 problems we need to solve. So we need to go put in more sensors, or we need to go connect these 3 systems together to correlate the data that we have today. Those customers have very successfully implemented some of the transformational outcomes that they are seeking. And when the whole IIoT concept started, and when everyone was, we had a whole bunch of startups trying to come up with IIoT technologies. It was a mad rush to put in the best sensor that you could get for IIoT to maybe measure humidity as an example, or measure vibrations. That seemed to be the most common sensor to put on a machine and see what the vibration of but all of that was done without a specific goal or an outcome of what that would drive for the business. I think the industrial companies have matured from that time, and they have started to kind of realize that it's not just putting random sensors anywhere that will get them there. It's more, it has to be a more knowledgeable approach of understanding where they stand in terms of what data they have, what automation they have, and where do they need to invest in. So I think starting with understanding what data they have and what data they need is the fastest and the easiest way to solve, and that will kind of open the doors to, okay, what would be the next step as they go.
Thank you for that. Earlier in my career, when we were wanting to add instrumentation, it was a very costly process because you had to shut down, you had to modify the pipe, you had to, wire everything, and it was a big deal. With IoT today, you can strap something on, or you can bolt on a vibration and sensor, and it's just so much different. But talking about data, I think is really interesting. It's one of my favorite topics. So Pranitha, in our pre-discussion, you mentioned that how we gather data makes sense, and makes sense of it determines our ability to make information-driven decisions that accelerates business growth. I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yes, thanks, Jen. So interesting answers from other panelists. So again, my answer would also overlap some of those, because First of all, the businesses recognizing the importance of data in the modern business will really help the organization to use the performance insights. Also, Microsoft has leveraged a lot of these solutions with these customers on a point solution basis versus the whole ecosystem solution. So initial efforts to even drive a data culture which will lead to a significant results is what Prasad was talking is very crucial and important. There have been several studies and industrial use cases that we've published white papers as well. And with my background from the manufacturing too, I can say that in certain areas of production, the first upgrade of factory has improved the machine setup by say 50x percentage. And like Jane, both you and Prasad mentioned about how IoT sensors can be tagged, but then the right IoT sensors and all that. If I take that to fab level or chip level manufacturing, as similar to what Jane you mentioned, that the processes are interconnected and the data share has to happen. Say, for example, in the chip manufacturing, there are thousands of steps, but then within this each process steps, there is also a metrology or the characterization step. So the data transfer needs to be, or sharing should be in such a way that connectivity would help them not only share, but also drive some insights to help solve some of the problems. So the way I would approach is that the industry's most factory plants, even till today, as I've been in Microsoft, I've been looking into so many customers that most of the plants are still manually tracking many of their operations from the order to all the way to the production. The bill of materials and everything. So there is a transformation that needs to happen and a good investment in cloud platform. Since I'm from Microsoft, I would say Azure cloud platform with, say, for example, BI and Internet of Things, IoT, Azure IoT Hub would really help and transform the whole plant into, depending on what kind of plant and how the operations are need to be set up, going from point solutions to the entire factory transformation for the plant. This actually enables us to drive to those few key solutions that do we want to do predictive maintenance or do we want to overall improve the operational or production efficiency. So that's how I would look into it. And when I say the data-driven decisions can accelerate businesses, it can accelerate overall factories with their business decisions and the factory efficiency.
Yes, I believe any problem can be solved with data, but you have to turn data into information. But I want to talk about just that, turning data into information. So Roy, how can manufacturers ensure they're getting insights and not just data from their IIoT technologies?
I think it's a very big question. It's almost the holy grail, I guess, of the entire data AI machine learning domain. Because just data is meaningless without getting insights or decisions or predictions or something that is changing our decisions out of this data. So I think many companies are progressing and collecting more data and improving the infrastructure to collect more data. And some companies are already using dashboards or analytics tools to process that data in an offline mode, sort of BI or analytics in a back office type of use cases. But I think what is the holy grail, and I think that's what we need to think about, is how to influence production in a day-to-day mode from that data. And I think that comes through a business process rather than a technology discussion. If we have a goal that we want to achieve, which is a business goal, and we want to influence something, we should walk backwards from that decision, from that information that we want to have, from that insight, and try to understand what data that we need and how we can process that data in real time. Can give you an example. Many companies done cycle time measurement or time studies in the last 100 years. But that's nice to have if you do that every quarter just to measure and maybe optimize and maybe practice lean. But can you measure cycle time continuously all the time? And when something is out of the normal cycle time in a dynamic way, get an alert and go and do an interaction and take an action to improve that. That will be much more productive, and that for me will be data to insight to value versus just collecting data.
Yes, I agree. And we used to do years ago time studies, but time on tools. And what we learned quickly is that when people know they're being watched, their behavior is different. So it was always not quite accurate doing that. Now you're talking about data though and information. And when I look at these plants, you know, every factory I've been in is at a different level of maturity. So I wanted to put up a poll for the audience to answer. And this was about IoT solutions. So what kind of solutions are you currently looking at? And can someone add the poll? Okay, so maybe not. We will go on and try and figure out the technical problems with adding the poll. That's something you can think about. What kind of IoT solutions are you currently looking at? AI, machine learning, data management, or IT/OT connectivity. And I've visited plants and factories that are all along that maturity level. I can put it in the chat and maybe we can gather that information later. Okay. Okay, so let's start going and taking the technical topic a little bit deeper. And Rowie, I'm going to go back to you. I'm going in reverse order now. So how can computer vision and the use of cameras enhance the performance of industrial IoT systems?
So I first of all, I'm a bit biased towards cameras, but I really think that camera is a very unique sensor. There are many other good sensors that can create amazing data, but cameras are really a unique device that can capture the reality and connect physical to digital, which is something that we're trying to do all around. And that's maybe the essence of IIoT. And I think cameras can understand people, they can track quality, they can understand behavior. So you can use cameras in so many different ways, from images through video, through local stations, through behavioral analysis in the entire shop floor. And for me, it's great. And I really encourage people that I work with and companies to see and look and create a computer vision strategy and how they're going to use cameras on different scales. It's interesting to see Gartner released their technology targets a few weeks ago, and edge computer vision is just in the bullseye, which is super cool. I think that it's probably the most mature technology that is not yet widely adopted. So it's a really ready tool. It's not like ChatGPT or NLP or complex AI that is way in the hype point. Computer vision is here. It's ready to bring value across almost any station. Kitting, packaging, OCR solutions, quality inspection, and analyzing actions, spaghetti mesh of the entire floor, you name it. Robotics guided safety. There are so many solutions out there that are ready to be adopted. And I think that can bring super boost value to companies.
I think we could have an entire hour discussion just on the technology that you're referring to, but I imagine you would have to train the models to understand that the robot's doing what it's supposed to be doing, or the person is, or something like that. So it's very interesting. But as you're doing that and you're starting to use more video technology and data from your IoT systems, there's a massive amount of data. So Pranitha, how do you drive consistent AI across cloud and edge when you're considering all of this data from so many different systems? You're on mute.
Yeah. So so turning data into insights with a consistent and comprehensive experience from the cloud to the edge. Again, Azure AI and machine learning capabilities, or any machine learning capabilities that can be based on a set of principles that include consistent application development, holistic security, unified identity, simplified device management, and a robust, intelligent edge portfolio and ecosystem that offers choice. So this way we can bring in data, AI, machine learning together to maximize process efficiency with some edge optimized data engine with built-in AI. So this is one kind of an approach. And this actually can lead into, if I dive into a smaller use case of, say, for example, increasing equipment reliability with predictive maintenance, identifying potential issues before they happen with a prescriptive maintenance solution built entirely within this IoT products platform, and looking at it into how to analyze streaming data from sensors and devices. Applying machine learning to predict and prevent equipment failures will really cut down the cost and downtime. I can even go back to one of the questions that I see. It's kind of relevant from Kevin Thomas, is asking what challenges currently semiconductor industry today is facing to make these edge solutions feasible. The reason I'm trying to relate this to the AI kind of thing is that, first of all, if we consider, I'll take an example of a foundry where there is a different equipment for different processes, and they all come from different vendors. So each of these machines are loaded with a ton of IoT sensors. But then what happens is that they are still so siloed that they want that each of these vendors will look into their IoT sensor data, but that's not totally shared with the foundry in a form where, again, the entire data need not be shared to the foundry because it is a massive amount, which would only make it more complex for the process improvement or what the factory wants to do, versus to get the better efficiency on the chip, versus the equipment vendors, when they collect the data to improve their tooling, has to be in a way applied. If this has an intelligent AI kind of, or machine learning kind of overlay, that would really help in solving better to share or build solutions that are integrated and improve overall efficiency in the way the chips are manufactured. And this will also cut down in the semi ecosystem broadly. If you see, if the sharing and intelligent AI is applied, the tool vendors they need not replicate the entire setup in their clean room factories for creating these processes redundantly on making sure will this process work on these tools or not. Instead, we can all merge together and integrate in the same floor where we can build this intelligent systems. That's how I would connect, and that's why it is very important to have the right AI approach.
Okay, thank you. I imagine this results in a lot of compute power that's needed.
Yes. And that's where the cloud.
Yes, it makes a big difference to have that data in the cloud. It gives you a lot more flexibility.
Yes.
So Prasad, what outcomes are you seeing from companies adopting these new technologies, such as what Pranitha was discussing?
Sure, Jane, and I think when you think about manufacturing, I think the eventual goal for all of the manufacturers is the net profit that they can drive per package that is shipped out of their factory, right? That's the eventual goal. Now, if you break that goal down into how can they achieve it, there are many different aspects where manufacturers are investing into circularity as a concept, right? How do they reuse materials or even assets for that matter? And there's a big push in even how equipment that's not used on one line can be reused to drive throughput of a factory. OEE has been a passion of manufacturers for probably 20-25 years since I've been doing industrial solutions. I think with what Pranita or Roy mentioned around vision systems or AI, I think the way to get to OEE or the optimization on quality or optimization on reducing downtime, I think that has kind of gone up a notch in terms of what it can contribute towards the overall effectiveness of the factory. So I think a lot of manufacturers have seen those outcomes in terms of improved quality, in terms of reduced energy usage, in terms of a higher, I would say, lesser downtime, leading to a much stronger throughput from their lines and equipment that in customers that I've seen adopting this.
I agree. Thank you. Oh, it looks like we have our poll going, so thank you. Appreciate that. So if everyone, I know that a lot of people typed in the chat, but if you could do something with the poll and add your comment there, I would appreciate it. So Prasad, you were talking about circular economy. I was actually in a conversation this morning with a company, and they're in the middle of digital transformation in manufacturing, but they're now starting to push circular economy. And the conversation was, it's not an either or.
Right.
The digitalization work that's happening will augment and support circular transformation, the circular economy. Absolutely. And so that's what I believe will happen there.
Yeah, and it's interesting, especially with manufacturers, right? I mean, you see manufacturers at different stages of where they are in their circularity journey, and there are some who are still at energy consumption, energy usage, energy optimization stage, but there are manufacturers that have kind of moved on to also looking at recycle, reuse of materials and assets and things like that. So, and this is all done through, the more digitization you do, the more data you get about your operations, and the more data you get, the more you can kind of get into some of these initiatives.
Yes, so I see that we got the poll back, and I'm not surprised to see that the highest one that people are working on is the IIoT connectivity, which is absolutely hits home with me. But when we talk about trying to have a business impact, you've got this first hurdle of actually connecting your assets and starting to get that data. So Mohammed, the C-suite always wants to understand the benefits of technology. So from your perspective, what are the benefits of industrial IoT and its impact on the manufacturing industry, specifically providing greater business agility? Because I think all our audience participants will be interested in how do they get approval to spend the money that's absolutely necessary in order to get the data. You're on mute, please.
Yeah, Jan, it's a very, very good question from you. Yes. Of course, real-time insights will provide greater business agility. I think that agility is the new currency of the manufacturing businesses. And in other words, let's say those who move slow get left behind. So IoT changes the game by collection of data from various things, which can be analyzed with advanced analytics software alongside transaction information, customer feedback, and market signals. And as Pranita said, it's one of the most critical benefits of IoT is the ability to evaluate the data on the macro level, and enabling informed decision making about maintenance needs, for example, or maybe potential supply chain disruptions, process improvement, and so on. Maybe one other very, very crucial perspective for the C-suite, as you mentioned, and as you focused on also, improvement of the inventory management. And we do have the same case when we were implementing the warehouse management systems or smart warehouse management systems. So, for example, shelf level sensors could be used to order supplies when they fall below a certain threshold. And as a result, companies can reduce waste caused by over ordering. And think about it, storage cost, expired materials, while also maintaining the supplies needed to keep production lines moving. Sensors might also be applied to perishable items, sending alerts if the humidity levels or temperatures falls outside normal range. Yeah, and one other also important perspective is to gain the visibility for your supply chain in your industry. So users can access real-time supply chain information by tracking materials, manufacturing cycles, and individual products as they move through global supply chain. So these data helps manufacturers predict potential issues and make purchasing decision based on range of factors, from natural disasters and civil unrest to increase the freight cost. On supplier side, also IoT supports greater transparency, enable more realistic estimates for turnaround times, material available, and work in progress status. And when it comes also to the quality control and the product design, because we also do have this experience in the what we call machine building industries like transformer or sensors, and the solution which tackle such kind of applications called PLM or product lifecycle management. And inside this solution also there is a part of the IoT. So IoT sensor can be used to collect aggregate product data and third-party data associated with each stage in the production in the product cycle, and that data can help identify the impact of external factors and final product. Another perspective also, like for example location tracking, which offers surprising cost saving and also reduce the downtime and repair, as Pranita said, in the predictive maintenance applications, which based on the IoT, of course, to collect the data and machine learning AI to predict the anomalies and predict failures before it happens. Yeah.
I think with the pandemic, the past few years, we've really seen how fragile our supply chain is. And the more data we have on the whole line, as well as in each individual warehouse and factory, is going to just improve that. What you're talking about will also support the on-time and full delivery. I was surprised to learn how much variety there is on actual on time and in full deliveries, especially after the pandemic started, and down in the 20s and 30%. It's really terrible. But with technology and with data, we can make better decisions and plan accordingly so that we're able to not be hurt so bad when the supply chain breaks. So a slight shift. So John, in our pre-session, you talked a bit about universalautomation.org, and you've also mentioned it already today. But I was wondering if you could explain how the organization, a little bit more about it and what it does to deliver the benefits or help deliver the benefits of IoT.
Sure, it's really two things, universalautomation.org. It's an enabling technology based on an IEC standard, the IEC 61499, if you want to go ahead and Google that and have a look if you don't know it. But in simple terms, IEC 61499, it's event-driven function blocks, software components that are decoupled from the hardware, so they're independent of the hardware. So the idea is I can create applications using proving and use software components and then deploy it to different equipment. It's not tied to the hardware. So that's a technology, if you like. And the second part is it's a community. It's actually a non-profit association headquartered in Belgium in Europe. It has currently just over 30 members from the user community, from the vendor community. And these members, they work together. There's a runtime execution engine that was donated by Schneider Electric initially. And the idea is members of this organization will manage this runtime execution engine. So vendors will implement it on their platforms. vendors. We have vendors from the OT community, but we have IT vendors from the IP, from the edge computing world as well. So they'll implement the technology, the runtime engine on their platforms, and then the users will then implement the technology in their factories. Okay. So it's a combination of new technology, truly object-oriented, event-driven, which event-driven is ideal for interfacing to IT systems, and a community working on a shared source model to actually have the same runtime execution engine. Okay, a bit like, kind of like Android or in the smartphone world. So that's the combination: technology, runtime execution engine, and a community deploying the technology. Okay.
Okay. And can you clarify the standard number you're referring
It's
to?
IC 61499,
Okay.
64099.
Thank you.
That's it. Someone's put it in the chat. It's IEC 64099. That's it.
Okay. And then I saw the chat run by, but you're also connected to the Open Process Automation group.
Yeah, the Open Process Automation Forum, they are defining a standard of standards of to implement an open process automation system. So they're selecting standards that exist, and one of the standards they've selected for the real-time automation part is IEC 61499.
Okay.
And for example, several of the ExxonMobil, Shell, they're members of universalautomation.org and are using the runtime execution engine on their test benches and field trials. So.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a second polling question. If someone could put the poll for me, because I don't have capability to do it. Otherwise, I'll put it in the chat again. So are you looking to implement industrial IoT solutions within the next 6 to 12 months or even sooner? So it would be a yes or a no. Oh, it's come up now, so thank you. My poll angel is responding. I kind of think with today's technology, it's hard not to be working in this space. Okay, so soon that we'll come back with the results of what's on there. So yes, so 74% of the respondents are looking to implement solutions. And I'm sure that you reach out to anyone on this panel, myself included, we're happy to give some advice on that. So I would like to add kind of an open discussion question. Most of my questions disappeared from the Q&A, but one of my favorite topics, aside from just data itself, is the human aspect in manufacturing. And I was wondering if each of the panelists can give some thoughts on human-centric technology and or manufacturing, either in reference to Industry 5.0 or bottoms-up approach or whatever your perspective is on that. So Roe, let's go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, so I think one of the most important aspects of technology is asking the right question on how to use this technology. And I'm a big believer in asking questions. And my main and basic question is how we use technology to help workers and augment people, and not to necessarily boost productivity, change the business, etc. These are also important questions, but I think the world goes through people. And while 20% of the world is working in manufacturing and shop floors and building stuff, I think this should be the first priority. And when you're adopting technology and thinking about IIoT and connecting and data and AI, the human-centric part is probably the most important element to take into consideration.
I like that, what you said, the world goes through people. I'm going to steal that and use it for future. And I think, all of us on this panel are very technical. So I'd like to get feedback from others as well. So John, how are you seeing this in your field?
I think one of the challenges in industrial automation is getting young people to come into the business, because it's based on technology that has been the same for the last 40, 50 years. And the young guys rather to program in C++ and Python. So that's one of our challenges, is attracting software engineers into industrial automation. On the other hand, one of the challenges of IoT is, rolling out a C++ application onto a plant, into a factory floor is very difficult, because who's going to maintain it? So again, that's one of our hopes for the IC 64099 approach. It's kind of a technology that both OT people understand. It's like a graphical function block language. So OT people sort of understand that. It looks familiar to how they've done things in the past. But the IT guys immediately see that, oh, these are software components. This is a black box, and it's kind of modern in the sense it's event and data. Here's an event, here's the data. Give me a result, please. Event and data. So it's a technology that we think it can modernize industrial automation and be attractive to both OT and IT professionals.
Yes, I agree. When you mentioned C++ and Python, I couldn't help but think that I used to be an expert in assembly. So that does date me quite a bit, but there's no one in college today or in classes today that is interested in learning assembly. So, so Pranitha, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Again, I like to always use some examples or problems that I came across. First and foremost is that technology is not going to slow down. And as we see, there's so much more going on. And like John just mentioned, young graduates are more excited to even look at manufacturing or working in the factories by looking at what kind of technology they can use, not more hands-on, but more on automation. So going to that, the current generation or the older generation of the factory workers or the employees are not able to utilize the advanced technology that has been building so fast to help the future of factories. So now is the time where the younger generation is coming in, intercepting, and then they can adapt and they can bring into. It's just like how the smartphones revolution has happened, same thing in the industrial revolution too. But then there comes this, what are the fundamental needs, human needs model? That's something that we have to think, and where will the human play in the future manufacturing system? That should constantly be in parallel while we are developing these system-centric principles and also looking into human-centric manufacturing.
I agree that technology will not slow down. I think it will only speed up, and somehow that we need to augment what's happening on the shop floor, not just to improve visibility of what's happening on the line, but to better engage the workforce and have it be more interesting. I see a lot of high turnover in all manual assembly type factories, and if you've got something slightly interesting, it's going to make a difference. So Mohammed, what's your thoughts on this? You're on mute again.
Yes. Bothing what you have mentioned all about the human-centric, or let's connect this term to the Industry 4.0. I would like to add that Industry 4.0 brings human closer to the design process of manufacturing. And according to my short experience in the term of Industry 4.0, I think you will be able to automate the manufacturing processes better, which means you will have real-time data coming in from the field, okay? And for example, I remind the very interesting case from Rolls-Royce business, and their business models has flipped from just selling engines to driving 50% of its revenue from services. And this is a very interesting example, because they can do that because they understand the design of failure of that engines. So they know what the quality process is of that engine, and they know how they want that engine to perform. Whatever Rolls-Royce or GE engine is in the world, they know how fast it is, how hot is it, and its attitude, and where it is in its performance life cycle compared to to where it's supposed to be as per its design capability, of course. Yeah. And if you take that to the next stage, you will have true seamless data between the field and the manufacturing processes and the design. And you are taking humans out of the manufacturing route, but they will be more involved in how the product is being used and how it can be designed, because they have more information. So flipping the arrow, and the automotive industry is from fossil fuel world to an electric world, for example, is going to be significant design challenge, and it will be much easier for humans to solve it when their tasks are being dealt with by techniques and robots. So this is a very interesting example. I believe that the Industry 5.0 will address that human-centric term or terminology in the following few years.
You know, Mohammed, I like what you said about bringing people closer to the manufacturing process. I've always been a proponent of that, but I hadn't actually thought of it in that way. So I always look at the point of impact. What are the problems? And then start talking to people and kind of go up from there. But you're absolutely right that people are part of the manufacturing process, and we can't forget that. So Prasad, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, so I think very valid points in terms of the new workforce. I think when we think about IIoT and we think about manufacturing, I think the concept of a connected worker is getting more and more popular. And when you think about connected worker, it is basically, how do you make the life of every persona that contributes to the manufacturing process? How do they operate more effectively, right? How do they operate with the same context? How do they operate with information that is provided to them versus them having to dig for information? But recently I was part of a panel that was talking about, do analytics help operators or they don't help operators? And there was a lot of passionate discussion about, if you just provide operators tools to analyze, they don't have time to do that. I mean, when they are standing on a line, they are probably assembling things every couple of minutes. They are boxing things. So analytics would help an operator if they advise the operator on what's coming next, or what is to be done next, rather than having the operator to go do these things. And I think those, when you look at some of those as technology move towards advising the personas in how to do work more effectively, I think that's where it's going to start to get more interesting and more human centric. But I think the whole connected worker concept, which has now gone into knowledge management and being able to access help when they need it, or be able to collaborate with others if they need. I think that concept is here to stay, and that's probably going to be a big field when you think about IIoT and as you adoption of technology.
I agree, and the more we can do that, the closer to the point of impact, I think the more efficient and effective the company will be. The person who I was talking to this morning was telling me about their solution, and that people are responding to it, but it's at the engineer level, it's not at the operator level.
Right.
And if the engineer is off for the weekend or whatever, they're not going to get that alert. So that needs to be something that can be done in maybe a more proactive way with the end user in mind. So we have just a few minutes left, and there's one open question. So when we're looking at all of the different types of communication technology, so it's listing here Wi-Fi, BLE, LoRa, which I don't know what that is. What are some of the barriers that we see in the cost and complexity? I know at my last company, the Wi-Fi didn't work so great in the facility, or they didn't have an OT network, or the cell phone coverage wasn't good enough. So what are your thoughts on that? And I think Rowie, I saw you clicked on something before it disappeared.
Oh, sorry, no, I just mentioned that it's being solved live, but
okay.
live. I think that this is dealing with infrastructure, and infrastructure is a critical enabler for adopting technology. And depends what technology you're adopting, you need the right infrastructure. I think it goes to this basic idea of IT supporting OT and enable the right infrastructure to build all these technologies and solutions, and augmenting people with cool technology and connectivity and data. And infrastructure is definitely a go-to. I don't think there are rule of thumbs on what technology to adopt and what is less good and characterize them. The world is so complex, and each company has its own constraints. I believe in the long tail. There are probably 2% of the problems that are repeatable, and 98% of the problems are highly specific, highly customizable for each manufacturer and each plant. And we need to focus on these tools that enable us to solve wide range. And if you want, maybe the approach is a citizen developer versus IT projects.
I agree with what you're saying. It's very complex and at the different factories all around the world. And I would suggest that you start with doing an evaluation of where you're at and what's the fastest way that you can actually start seeing results based on what your infrastructure looks like. And you're going to see anything vastly different through all of it. So any other comments? We have about 1 more minute.
I think one quick thing that I wanted to add is a lot of customers, and I agree with Roy. It's the security aspect is going to be important when they choose the technology they want to adopt from a connectivity standpoint, and then what resources do they have on the ground to implement that technology? Not every manufacturer has the same level of IT resources that can manage some complex implementations, right? So that also determines which technology folks adopt. I'm sure, as when this is manufacturing, so cost has to be a factor. Yes. But I think as you think about the IIoT world, as IIoT adoption has increased, the cybersecurity maturity is also starting to come into the manufacturing industry.
Yes, I see that as well. So I would like to wrap up here, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining our panel today. I really found it to be an interesting discussion. I hope you did as well. And remember, if you have questions on any of these topics, feel free to reach out to people individually and have a conversation on it. I do want to thank our sponsors, so Microsoft, GE Digital, Hive MQ, and Hitachi Vantara, and give a shout out, of course, to IIoT World for hosting us. And so now it's time for everyone to move to the next session, Activate Your Industrial Data Lake for Data Products. Enjoy the rest of your day.